So we're going to get started again because we have a very important conversation that is going to be shared with us. And so I just want to invite that same level of respect that all prior panels have experienced, because we've been doing a really great job on time management. So thanks to you all for being a part of that process. And now Garrett will introduce our next speaker.
Wow, good people. That was history in the making, what just happened in that conversation. Such an honor, and so beautiful, the truth being spoken with such compassion and solidarity. So, so grateful to everyone, so honored to be here. And now to braid another foundational dimension to this important conversation, farm worker power. And who else but Mily Treviño-Sauceda to lead us in the conversation of farm workers are just farmers without land. This is recognized, she is recognized as one of the founders of the farm worker women's movement in the United States, Turtle Island. She was born in Bellingham, Washington to a migrant farm worker family, is the third of 10 children, worked in agricultural fields since the age of 8, became a union worker organizer with the United Farm Workers, the UFW, in the 70s, worked with Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, and others. As a single mom, she raised her son Humberto, whose name means the son of the community. She went on to become one of the co-founders in the 80s of Mujeres Mexicanas in Coachella Valley, and moved on to then co-found Líderes Campesinas, the first state-based farm worker women's grassroots organization in California. She became director of Líderes Campesinas and is now president emeritus of the organization, and has gone on to found the legendary Alianza Nacional de Campesinas. Over the course of many decades, she has won numerous awards for her tireless efforts, including 100 Heroines of the World in the Sister of Fire Award, the Ford Foundation NYU Award for Leadership in a Changing World. People magazine recognized her twice, and Líderes Campesinas was honored for the 30-year distinguished leadership of Mily in 2009 and 2018. She won the Cesar Chavez Legacy Award in 2015 and 2018, and was named one of the 9 laureates given for the Prize for Women's Creativity and Rural Life in 2016 by World Women Movement to End Violence, an international organization. She became part of Novo Foundation's 4th cohort of the Movement to End Violence, and won the Ingenuity Award for Social Progress by the Smithsonian a few years ago. She has also been lauded as one of the feminists of the Frederick Douglass list, as well as many others. Actually, it's too long to even mention. Importantly, she is a longtime board member and co-visionary of the Rural Coalition, which we're so proud to have centered in this summit, Coalición Rural. And she has mentored hundreds, and I would say thousands, of young activists and now students. And I've personally been so honored to have her work with the students of American University and seeing personally how she generously shares her wisdom with every single person she runs across. There's such a beautiful humility, even as she's such a legendary leader. We are so honored to have just held space for Alianza's Convencia last week at American University, which gathered hundreds of farm worker women in an intensive 2-day workshop and strategy session, which culminated in a day of lobbying on Congress Hill last week, and the next day speaking truth to power at the USDA. And you all, of course, will be hearing about that and carrying on some of the beautiful organizing work that Mily does. Thank you so much, Mily.
It's on? Oh. It is. Wow. I do want to thank Garrett and the university and the people that have mentored me, one of them being Lorette. I'm glad she's here. And all of you for what I will be sharing. And I have asked Amy Tamayo, who's our policy and advocacy coordinator, to also share a little bit more. I mean, she was the one that worked very hard with a group of organizations that helped us with putting together not only some of the workshops out of the 20 workshops that we had. Actually, there were 20 you would call focus groups in 2 days, in a day and a half, with 130-some women present and 30-some virtual that could not come in person. But I'd like to share with you a little bit before we talk about the Convencia, how important it is, this work, in terms of, you know, I always say I was 5 years old when I started. No. In 1988, we started organizing because we did, and I always love saying this, and Garrett, you've heard me say it, Lorette, also, that we did a study for a master's thesis in the 80s. I had no high school during that time, and they asked me if I could help prepare the instrument to do the questions and then prepare people to do interviews with farm worker women. And the interesting thing there was, around that time, I had already, I started working when I was 8 years old as a farm laborer with my siblings and my mom and my dad in Idaho. As we all know, or most of us know, Idaho is a state that does not have that many protections for farm workers. And some of us children, I mean, we were truly migrants. Some of us children were born in the state of Washington, like I was. Others were born in the state of Idaho, others in Mexico, and then we landed in California, and then traveling around California. California is one of the richest states in agriculture. And our family landed in the southeast part of California, the desert. A lot of citrus in that area. And then we would commute 100 miles each way to go work and then come back. And that was during my teenage years. That's when we learned about the United Farm Workers. And it was so interesting. We did not want to join the union because Cesar was organizing grape workers in the grape industry. And they worked by the hour. And my family was so used to working piece rate. We were earning 3 times more. But there were no toilets. It was so far away. We would have to leave at 4:15, 4:30 in the morning, and then come back, arrive around 5 p.m., 5:30 in the afternoon. That was a daily basis, even sometimes on Saturdays. Well, most of the time Saturdays and sometimes on Sundays too. And that was during my teenage years. I was not going to school, and of course, my 2 older brothers either, and my younger brother, there were 4 of us. Anytime there was an inspection, we would climb the ladder and stay up the ladder. So they would not see that we were younger than others. There were many, even when my siblings when we were working in irrigation in Idaho, there were several accidents with my siblings. One of them almost lost his hand. My mom had almost heat stroke, different things. And then the chemicals being applied. The same thing happened in California, but in California, every time we would travel to another place to work, there was no house for us. We would have to stay in our cars until we would find a home, a place, a roof. I would say roof now because whatever we would find was so substandard, and we would still pay the same as any other. landlords or landladies would take advantage that we really needed a place to stay. And the majority of the time, the sewer system was not good, or there were so many, rodents in those places. We were always very unhealthy. The situation was bad all the time. This same situations, the same kind of issues are still happening in 2023. And these last experiences that I just shared with you are in California, and it says California is the only state that has all protections for agricultural workers. As you know, agricultural workers are exempt from the Fair Labor Standards Act because we inherited what most people, especially Black people, African American, had to go through. The only way they were willing to pass the Fair Labor Standards Act is by making sure how dare they were going to allow whomever who had been enslaved have the same protections as other workers from the other industries. But we ended up as Latinos, we like to call ourselves more Latinos, okay, Latinas, than Hispanics or whatever other terms. And I like to be called Chicana, which is a little bit different, because it's more politica. Okay, so let me go in terms of, because there was so many different issues there. I mean, there was a lot of sex discrimination, there was a lot of issues happening. We ended up joining the union because twice before joining the union, there were 2 spraying happenings to the whole crew in different places. Because we would be moved to different blocks because, we were harvesting lemons during that time. I remember I was, 115? I weigh 150 some right now. I was 115. I would carry the ladder and then use the ladder. I worked there 5 years. Doing that kind of work, you get the experience. You know how to, I don't know how you translate maña? Work. No, maña. It's like habit, pero es, maña es una, it's a what? It's like a trick of the trade. Okay, something like that, okay? How to make sure I would get more lemons without having to use just one hand. I would have to use both hands, blah, 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 I was raised with 3, we're 10 children. I was the oldest of the women. And of course, I was raised around brothers. So I never wanted to be left behind by my brothers. So I was always competing with them, and et cetera, but because of what happened during the last, and this is something, it comes back to me all the time. This is about the lack of human respect and dignity. There was this woman working with us. There were several women, but this woman, she was pregnant. I think she was 5, 6 months. And we all went through all these different kinds of symptoms because we were being sprayed. And just the shock of not being able to see because, it was a plane that went through and just threw all this dust. We were very disoriented whatsoever. Lots of headache, a lot of headache, and our eyes and were just itching. Our body was itching. I was very disoriented. I didn't know where was out. I mean, you're working around trees. We were harvesting lemons during that time. And by the time I got out, is because I started hearing one of my brothers calling me, and some people were already out there. We had no water, but some, 2, 3 workers had their own gallons, and we were pouring water over our face, because if we would, try to scratch our eyes, they would itch more. And so I didn't see the woman there. I didn't see her after. It took us several days to, in terms of the symptoms, headaches, feeling like wanting to vomit. We never knew what they had sprayed. They would always tell us, don't worry, it's medicine for the plants. What do you think when you're hearing medicine for the plants? It's not going to hurt you. Okay, well, that medicine for the plant, 2 weeks later, we found that this woman was taken to the hospital and had a premature baby, but she did not survive. I was a teenager. And then, people start talking. And I remember my mom started sharing that when we were in Idaho, she was pregnant. And she had lost her pregnancy. I just knew that during that time, I connected the dots, why she was in bed most of the time. That and many more things is why we wanted to do this survey, to document the issues, the problems that women faced in agriculture. And we were finding that, and we're still haven't gotten resources or anything that can help us document why we have more women with cancer, different kinds of cancer. Why we know that many of our children have special needs, have not so many different things. I mean, and I'll just give the example of California, because California, as I said, is one of the richest states in agriculture. And for us, even though it's got most of the protections, it's got most of the issues that are, there's always justification that there's not enough resources for state agencies or federal agencies to go out there and monitor or enforce. And for us, it's, we wanted to do that survey, and that survey really changed a lot for me and the people. There were 7 of us. We interviewed 30. We interviewed 60, and I interviewed 30. You can imagine how passionate I was in terms of wanting to interview more and more and more women. As way before, and this is 10 years after we joined the union, okay? But when we joined the union, going back to that, I remember I was very hungry to learn, what can we do to do change? I remember I didn't think the way I think right now during that time. I just was angry. I was very upset most of the time. There were no toilets. And we all women know it's very hard to just go behind a tree. And then you find out that other people without, following you, they get to see you. That's so, anyway, so just many different things. And then I'm someone that likes, whoever knows me, they know me, I'm very outspoken. And I know that if I would have known what I know right now, I would have not been silent when I was sexually harassed several times. It didn't happen to me in just one company. Remember, we worked, as you all know, agricultural is seasonal. So we would have to look for different jobs. And it was happening to me many times. And when I tried talking about it, neither the union was ready, neither my dad was ready. I was afraid that my brothers would know. You know what happens when brothers know? You don't want to know. So I was afraid of that. Of course, they learned about it 20 years later. They were so upset. Not at me, because they knew after who were the people. And during that time, when I tried talking with my dad, you know, bless his heart, he wanted to help me, but he started questioning me. And we all know you don't want to be questioned. You want people to understand. You're not asking for any of this, but it's happening. So all these different things that were happening, I wanted to, you know, we got involved with the union. All these different things still happened. This is why I'm saying the union was not ready for this. My dad started working for the union. A brother started working for the union, and I only lasted 6 months. They were not ready for someone like me. No, we know each other. I support the union very much whatsoever. They do a much better job than what they did before in terms of women issues. There's more women involved, etc. So when we did the study brought up to light, and you know, that thesis got an award for Cal State Long Beach, at Cal State Long Beach, and a group of us got together after listening to the women. Before I knew, before doing the study, I didn't even know, I knew all these different issues, and I knew that the women were going to talk about this, but I didn't know that I was not listening anymore. Well, let me, just so that you know, because I got involved with the union with my family, and as union members, we learned our rights. So, of course, there were some places they would fire me or fire my whole family because we were trying to exercise our rights whatsoever. Then I was hired by Legal Services. You know, I was referred. They went looking for me at a 5-hour away at this labor camp where we lived, and they offered me the job. There were attorneys that wanted to know if I could work with them, and I said, oh my goodness, no. I didn't want to work with attorneys because if after like a week working in the fields, calling out things that I didn't like, I was fired, much less with attorneys, you know. I would be fired by them, you know. So, well, I ended up working with them 10 years. During those years is when I would see women coming in, whether either spouses or significant other, and to complain about wage theft, complain about, you know, pesticide spraying, complaining about different things. And there were times that I would see women that would come all battered. Our agency was not ready to respond to these kind of issues. Or about harassment, I think it was only one case out of the 10 years. And it was so interesting, so that when we did the study, when I was listening to the women, they were saying many things that had happened to me, that had happened to my mom, that had happened to our relatives, that had happened to our friends. And the women we interviewed, the majority I did not know. But there were some questions. You that are part of the university know that when you're doing a survey or you're doing these kind of assessments, you always want to, you're doing a good job, you always want to find out what do people recommend. The women I interviewed helped me understand that listening to them made me think more and reflect more about if what I was doing was the right thing. Was I really responding to the issues or what I thought they needed? And I, you know, there were 100 and some questions for each interview, okay? So you can imagine it was like an hour and a half to 2 hours of just listening to the women. And the majority of them had never been interviewed Hamas before. And some of them would get emotional. I would spend like a little bit more, almost 3 hours with them. And for me, it was what they were saying at the end. Some of them would say, I would hope there was support group, maybe if I learn more about what there is out there, if some of us can get together and talk and support each other. I was like, oh my goodness. 2 or 3 said, if we can form a union of women. So, oh my goodness, those are my kind whatsoever, no? But it's true, it's true. I got so, you know, there were 7 of us, and we would debrief. And I was the one most excited about this. And I'm sharing with you because I wanted to be congruent in terms of the kind of work I did during the time with legal services was to give out information, give them all the information we could about their rights, know your rights, this is what you can do, this is where we are, these are other agencies we can refer you to, blah, 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 all the time. 10 years I did that. And we won cases. But I started feeling we were just putting Band-Aids. Because when they responded to all these questions and then they said at the end, if there's an opportunity, I'd like to, if there's an opportunity, get together with other women. So we started leafleting around and saying, we were able to convince ourselves to see if it was true, if women really wanted to get together. And we went to all these places. And 2 or 3 of them that I interviewed came. And they became the pioneers of what we started doing, which is part of, we named it Mujeres Mexicanas, and we had already gone to the school district asking for support because there were too many kids dropping out. There was the council was not paying attention. We wanted housing for farm workers. We did all these things. They were not paying attention. And then we said, okay, we need to strategize. We didn't use these terms. I'm using them right now. Tenemos que juntarnos. We need to get together and talk. What should we do? We were all desperate. Said, well, one of us said, well, get them out and get other people in. The school district, the city council. And 6 months before, we trained ourselves to register people to vote. Wow. And we got, some of the women did not know how to read and write, and some of us, it was 2 or 3 of us together, but they did not know how to read and write, but they knew how to talk. They knew how to convince people. It's so important, blah, blah, blah. And maybe they did not know, they didn't have the citizenship whatsoever, but they were convincing others. And then they convinced themselves to also become citizens, etc. But we got people out of office in the council, and then we got people in office. We did the same with the school district. We did, and that was in this is why 1989 became so famous for us, because then the first school ever, Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, Cesar Chavez for us was our idol, because through his teachings, we learned a lot about respecting us, our dignity, blah, blah, blah. And I'm gonna go quicker, okay? I needed to place this here. And for us, it was, when we heard that the school district was going to build a school after 30 years, a new school, we went and met before the election. We went and there was a forum, and we started raising our hand. Can it be named under Cesar Chavez? And everybody was laughing at us. They said, no, Cesar's still alive, blah, blah, blah. This was 1989. Cesar passed away in 1993. We pushed, and the people who got to win and be part of the school district knew who had walked the streets for them. The first thing in the agenda was to name the school. And we had several hearings because there were people that were opposing, no, he should not be it should be others, blah, 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 all this. And we got more people to come in. Of course, you bring your family, you have a full room, no? Especially our family, we're 10 children, and everybody else, no? So we learned very fast through the UFW the power of the collective. Yes. We knew very fast that it's about everybody in different ways will have, your own talents, your own skills, and you get together and you have power. We learned very fast that the more we were understanding about rules and regulations, or what we could do in the city, what we could do in the school district. We got involved with the school site councils, we got involved with boards and commissions, we got involved with so many different things. We organized conferences in Spanish, first ever, for women in the Coachella Valley. This is California. Our third conference, those were called conferences. Our third conference, we said, we want to build, this is 1991, we want to build a national network of pharmaco women. People were like, what? What are you're dreaming? You're crazy. You only have a small group. We were already by then 50-some women, okay? During that year. And we said, okay, well, we might be crazy, but we're still doing stuff, no? So we started organizing around California with $8,000 from the Miss Foundation. And we said, we thought we had $1 million because we had never had money before. Yeah. So interesting, we organized Líderes Campesinas in 1992, late 1992, and we organized a Convencia. That Convencia, that's the first statewide convening. We got 100 women there. They brought their children. So anyway, you can imagine. And, well, this is a long story, what happened there, but we had 15 different workshops, and we said the only way we will have a good idea what we're going to be doing is by the women telling us. We need to sit down and listen. And this is what we've been having ever since then, statewide. And the priority areas are decided by the women. The women that are there were the facilitators of each one of the workshops, all Pharmaca women. The only thing they did was open dialogue and said, this workshop is about this. Let's talk about what are our problems, our issues, and what recommendations you want to give. And believe me, they were talking. They were talking. And it was in one day we did that. That was the first time. And then for us, it just started a big thing. We had very little money or nothing. $5,000 here, $10,000 there, whatever. We traveled around California. Health clinics were wanting to be involved, the migrant education wanted to be involved, all these different groups. And then in 1994, we had our second convening, and there the women said, we need to organize and build a 501c3. That's the only way we can get funding so that we can do more. And we did. So this is why in 1996 we formed our board, all Pharmaca women on the board, representing all these groups. And it's continued truly the same way. Right now, it's 17 different groups, all represented by the women, and they're elected by their local chapters. And the women are the ones that make the decision. Right now, this organization, Líderes Campesinas, has 2.1 million in their budget. I became the first executive director. Believe me, I never had that kind of budget during my time, okay? But we trained people. The majority of the people that were staffed were Pharmaca women. We trained them to become outreach workers, then administrative assistants, then specialists, and then we invented all sorts of titles for them. What do you mean by that? No, you're a specialist. Specialist in what? No, but you know better in terms of what's going on in your community about all these issues. Oh, okay, well then, but it was about them understanding how to work in this other kind of world. Because they already know what's our world. So, okay. Then, pusieron el leadership for changing world. Okay. Then, of course, we worked and presented in different conferences. If you think I'm passionate, the women that participate, I mean, you were there, Lorette, you've known the women. They are very, I mean, this mission was prepared by the women. That was we established a national network of Pharmaca women called Alianza, which is Alliance, Nacional, National, de Campesinas of Pharmaca women. So, and they're saying our mission is to unify the struggle and promote leadership of campesinas in a national movement to create visibility. We have to be visible, because if we're not visible, who's going to pay attention? No one. We have to be visible, okay? And advocate. So a lot of groups, and the Royal Coalition was one of the pioneer groups that supported our movimiento, knowing that whatever we were already doing in California, we could do it throughout the nation. We're now in 20 states. Very interesting, huh? So these are the different organizations that are part of, and very proud. Because of these convenings, we are able to get we were able to get in 2012 and 2013 national convenings. We bring them to DC. Don't ask us how, but we're able to, and because it's very democratic, they're the ones that decide what are our priorities. And they're the ones that say, this is what's going on, whatsoever. So it's gender-based violence, labor and worker rights, immigration, because reform, because we have a very, very broken immigration system. And the pesticides and environmental justice, because of what I shared. You know, many women that are a part of our membership have children with special needs. And we say special needs, but there's a lot of issues, deformities. And there's pockets of towns of families with that. And that says a lot. What is being done? EPA is not doing much around that. We do theatrical skits. You know, the theater is used in our communities from our home countries through church, through many other, you know, religion uses theater. So we use theater. And theater is used so that we can build trust, so that people don't have to talk about their issues, and we don't have to be like just you know, giving a presentation or a PowerPoint or whatever. We have several vignettes, and it could be about an issue, and we ask the women, kind of like Tupperware parties. Someone invites, you know, their friends, and they come. Whomever comes is people that they trust. But then we present the skits, and they don't have to talk about their issues. They talk about what they see on the scenes. And then we start building that trust. And whomever is facilitating is very well versed on the issue and gives the right information. And then we get the people to open the dialogue, and then there's a lot more things that are happening. And then we do theatrical skits at universities, at conferences, at different places, and then we do trainings. We train them so that they can engage more women. It's about engaging others. Okay, now, Amy is the one that's going to give the good, juicy things right here. And I've been told we only have 5 more minutes. Okay. We did 20 workshops this time. Thank you for American University to support us. And of course, Lorette's home bed and breakfast. When every time we would come, she's always housing us, and then at the office supporting us whatsoever. And to prepare, we never before nationally we had brought in more than 100 women. This time we did bring 130 some women, and then virtually others with all the support. You can see some of the general plenaries there that were happening. And when you see here, we do a lot of art. We're going to call it The Curtain. It's on sexual harassment. My first time that I spoke about sexual harassment and being sexually harassed, it was almost 20 years after. But just because the women I felt were more courageous than me. And believe me, many of them have won cases in front of, you know, with the support of EEOC or others that we have pushed to make sure that they represent our Pharmaco women better. So, ¿quieres venir? Okay. I'm sorry, I'm taking a long time.
¿Puedes ir a la siguiente página? Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Tamayo. I'm the Policy and Advocacy Coordinator with Alianza. And I just wanted to share a little bit about our super successful Legislative Advocacy Day, which was a part of our Convencia. Our Convencia was 4 days long. The first 2 days were dedicated to those workshop focus groups, and each workshop had a different topic, and we tried to have an intersectional conversation of, you know, pesticides and sexual discrimination, housing and workers' rights. And a lot of those focus groups also spent time coming up with not just discussing what the problems are and how we want to address these problems, but discussing what do we need to address these problems and what commitments are we making. And the first one was we're going to go speak to our representatives and our senators and share our input directly so that the freshman offices and staffers know what's going on in their states, but also are aware of the fact that we're experts, we have recommendations, and we have ideas for solutions. So we spent a lot of time preparing for this day ahead of the Convencia. We did 3 informational sessions leading up to the convening, and those 3 sessions were to open up a conversation on what our ideal agricultural legislation would be. Not necessarily, we didn't discuss the Farm Bill at first because we wanted to have an open conversation, and people had really great ideas of what would make them feel more comfortable engaging with, agencies like USDA or EEOC. They talked about some new issues that they've been seeing in communities. And after we had this big visionary conversation, we then said, okay, how can we bring some of those creative ideas and solutions into the sections of the Farm Bill where we can try to advocate for farm workers? As we know, farm worker women there's not a labor section in the Farm Bill. Farm workers have not been considered in the Farm Bill in the past. And as such a large agricultural piece of legislation that affects farm worker women every single day, we feel that we should be considered in the Farm Bill and we should be in the Farm Bill. So we were able to have 49 visits on the day that we were on the Hill. 120 or so folks participated in these visits in person. We did a lot of advocacy on our 4 priority areas: immigration, workers' rights, violence against women, and pesticide and environmental justice. But a lot of it was also surrounded around the Farm Bill. And it was a really great opportunity for the Campesinas to share a lot of their lived experiences and to show examples of how a lot of the gaps in the Farm Bill are playing out every single day in rural communities and farm worker communities. Women were really vulnerable and open and shared experiences of themselves combating cancer, of their children developing skin allergies because they accidentally washed their work clothes with their children's clothes, not knowing that the pesticides had any sort of risk, discussing how they have no access to mobile or medical services, how the ones that do have access, the doctors are not equipped or educated on the effects of the pesticides because these impacts on these vulnerable communities are not researched enough. So we had really great horrible examples, but it was a great opportunity to share these stories and say, this is why we need funding for this. This is why we need research for this. And it was a really great day. Everybody, I think, had great visits. We were able to meet with some of our representatives. Here's a picture with Cory Booker and Representative Brownlee. And we were able to celebrate later that night and share our input. And we've been trying to focus now on the type of follow-up we're doing and trying to develop some more policy strategies around those conversations that we had during the convening. Yeah, thanks. And I'll pass it back to Mily.
I'll conclude, whomever's making, signs in the back. At USDA in 2012 and then 2013, and now again in 2023, they opened the doors for farm workers. Never before 2012 they had invited farm workers to come in. Wow. And never. Even Arturo Rodriguez, who was the successor of Cesar, shared that with us. Wow. Said they'd never invited us before. It was Cesar's granddaughter, who was the farm worker coordinator, that pushed for that. She was during that time. And back to the Rural Coalition, when was it, Gloria, 2008? That's when it was pushed by Rural Coalition very hard and other groups to have a farm worker coordinator position. And that was the one that opened doors for us. Opening doors is just a start. And we had all these, we ended up having meetings with, how many, ¿cuántos eran? 13 different agency representatives. Wow. Federal agencies, not just from USDA, from different other departments. Housing, Department of Justice, Department of Labor, other departments aside from USDA. And you know how the government is most of the time. If some of you are here that are from the government, I will tell you also. They had an agenda. They never shared the agenda with us. They had people there to tell us, to talk with us, whatsoever. And then we took, this is why I think they put this picture. We took the microphone away from them and we started our own meeting. Even with the agencies, we said, okay, you're allowing us to come in, and this is our organization, and this is we just wanted your space. And of course, they never told us until that day who they had invited. They were giving us hints of who had they invited, but we're following up with all these agencies. There's lots of work for us to continue doing. They were very surprised in terms of, they gave up on me. You know, we took away the microphone and then we started just dealing with what needed to happen in our own agenda. It was our meeting. Yes, USDA does not belong to the people that work there. It belongs to all of us. And we didn't do anything wrong. The only thing we did was follow our own agenda. And we were successful with that. And of course, they kept telling Mily, are we going to be able to finish? And I said, no, we'll finish for you. We did. And we were successful. And then they said, okay, well, I mean, and we did ask them to give us breakfast and other things. And then we used their space in the afternoon to do the USDA project, Rural Coalition and Alianza. We were able to get funding to provide, what's it called, Lorette?
Food and farm worker pandemic.
See. I always rely on other people giving the right terms and whatsoever. And the same way we did before, HRSA project, in terms of making sure that our community was vaccinated and the whole thing. We fought for our communities to get that, so we also did that other project. And these are most of the participants. I don't think all of us are there, but yeah. Anyway, and the fight continues. And one thing I do want to share with you is that we have a project called Mother Earth Project. And this has to do with getting the women prepared to become small farmers. But getting them prepared to not become what others have done to us. To learn to be respectful, to learn to be respectful with the earth, and because taking care of the earth will take care, it's one part of, but is taking care of the environment. And we know we heal ourselves by working the earth, working with plants, working with making sure that we know what we're eating is fresh fruit and fresh vegetables. Who was the one that was sharing that went to her family member and was eating fresh fruit and Gail. Well, that's the same thing. We know that what we're eating tastes good, taste as fruit and taste as vegetables because they're fresh. And we don't want any more poisonings. The women know that by them creating their own business, they don't have to deal with someone that's going to be exploiting them, abusing them. And we still have, one of the things that I did not mention in terms of what was happening with me, with the harassment, I was lucky I was not raped. I was assaulted. several times. I was not raped. Thank God I had brothers that taught me how to fight. I'm serious. I'm serious. But many women did not. And we have helped, we have supported many women file complaints where 5, 6 years have been raped by the same person over and over because they don't know how to get out of that situation. Terrible. 9 out of 10 women in the workplace are sexually harassed. That's too much. That's too long. That's just too much. And for us, it's and the women, that was one of the workshops. And they're saying we want that changed. No more. And violence against women in the home, and violence, against our children, etc. All these different situations. As I was hearing, or Amy and I were hearing, everything you're sharing, we go along with everything you're saying. We understand. And we also want to work together because this farm bill needs to have more representation of us all together. And this is why we agreed we wanted to be here. Of course, we know the Federation. We're happy that we were invited. And there's a lot of conversation that will be happening in the following days. And believe me, we're going to learn a lot. And hopefully we can continue collaboration. Thank you so much.
Mily and Amy. Yes? Mily and Amy, thank you so much for being here. Another round of applause. And thank you all for being here. We have made it to the end of day 1, and I have a couple of announcements for everybody before we break. First of all, so much gratitude to all of our panelists, all of our speakers, especially to Daniel for all of your moderation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This was a very successful day. Thank you to all of our partners, all of our sponsors.